In this video, we'll be looking at importing text files using SSIS package that we built in the previous video. We're going to be using a file connection to connect to the file that we're going to import. We'll need a file variable to actually hold the name of the file, because we're going to be using a for each file loop container to examine a folder and import all the files that are actually in that folder. We're also going to use a script task to dynamically set the file connection, and we're actually going to use a data flow task to import this into a staging table. The files themselves are going to be held in an import files folder. We've just simply got one file in there, a good file at the moment with two columns, column 1, column 2, names and some numbers. Okay, so let's go around back into bids. So let's create a flat file connection. Simply call this import file. Browse and we'll connect to the file initially. So it reads in all the metadata. The first row has column names in it, so we can preview this file as well. So you can see it brings it in nicely. Simple comma separated file. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is add a for each loop container. And the for each loop container is going to examine the file path. Let's drag that across. Let's configure this. Rename it first. And we'll configure it. Okay, so our collection is for each file, and we're going to browse to the folder that we want to actually look at, although this will be overridden at runtime using the config. And the way we actually do that is by using expressions. Okay, so the directory that we're going to be looking at is actually held in the variable file path. That file path is read at runtime, so it just reads it from that config table. So it's actually looking at that. Oh, and we've noticed that we're missing a backslash off there, so probably need to add that one in. Yep, that's looking at the right place. So the only other thing we needed to do, let's just make this a little bit bigger, was add in the file name. So for each file that's in there, we need to actually look in that folder pointed to by the file path, and we need to bring in the file name and extension into our variable file name. So we now have file name, file path, and what we'll do now is we'll do a script task. This is where we're going to dynamically set the connection of the import file to the file path and file name that the for each loop container is actually accessing. So let's get in there. Read-only variables, we need two at this stage. We need the file path and file name. That's all we need. And editing the script, we'll simply set the DTS connections of the import file, which is our flat file connection manager. We'll set that equal to the file path plus the file name. So connection string, and we said we'd set that equal to file path and file name. So import file, connection string, that's read from config, and that's read from the for each loop. So I'll just put a comment in so we know which comes from where. Okay, so that dynamically sets the connection to the import file connection manager. The next thing to do is a data flow task, where we're simply going to have flat file source and a SQL destination. Just rename this import file. And let's connect the two together. Okay, right, let's edit the data flow. Flat file source, simply call this import file. Let's configure this, import file, yep. columns 1 and 2, that's good. Preview it, yeah, it's fine. Okay, and now SQL destination, we'll call this staging file or staging table. Okay, and you can see our staging file has 2 columns, column 1 and some number. But for the moment that's an empty staging table. Let's connect these two up. Configure the SQL connection. We don't want it going into the config connection, we want to go into the destination. Pick staging file as the destination table and then map the columns across. Column 1's come across, just put column 2 in. Okay, save the work, we're ready to go. So the for each loop container, looking at a folder, picks up a file name, puts it into the file name variable. The script task sets the connection of the file manager, of the connection manager for import file, and then the data flow task simply connects to it and imports it into the staging file table. Let's run that. So yeah, all good. 4 rows imported, and let's have a look. And there you see in the staging table we've got the 4 rows.